like to call to order the December 2nd, 2019 meeting of the Lyon Township Board of Trustees. Unbelievable, last meeting of the year. It's crazy, it went so fast. All please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you please let the roll show that we are all present? Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda.
I have a question, John, and
Sure.
I had emailed Michelle. On the consent agenda is a schedule of meetings for next year. A couple of the meeting dates got moved to a Thursday. Is it possible just to move them to the following Wednesday if there's, or a Monday if there's a conflict? I know it's a planning commission night, but they meet 24 times a year, and we meet only 12. So that would be, if we're not going to do it on a Wednesday rather than Thursday, I would just ask if we could potentially do that. I'm unable to make Thursday night meetings.
I have no problem just leaving it on Wednesday if that's okay with everybody. I just was trying to spread it out a little bit. So, I mean, I don't want to conflict everybody else's meetings and start moving everybody around if that's the case.
I don't think the planning commission would probably be heartbroken, but usually
Will you be heartbroken?
I might be hard.
you still get 22 chances. So. I just know, Michelle, you have a ridiculous number of meetings. That must be a record for, not meetings, but elections this year, and I understand that it's a crazy next day. So I'm, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to upset like all of the planning commission and everything, so we could just move it to a Wednesday after the board. We'll fix the schedule to reflect that to go into the paper.
Well, if that's the case, I'll promise to talk less on those Wednesdays.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, that's in writing now.
Did somebody write it down? Kelly, did you write that down?
So if that's okay with everyone, then we can make them adjustments and looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. I believe there's an addition that Carol asked us to
Right.
put on.
And Robert, too,
Robert, okay.
for the park.
Okay, well, the addition is the ordinance to amend the zoning sign ordinance, or the, and I think Carol can speak to that if everyone has no problem adding that to the end of the,
Right, it would just be consideration of the adoption of the first reading of an ordinance to amend section 9.03 on the rezoning sign requirements.
Okay.
is everybody okay adding that? And that would go as G?
H.
H? How come I got this old? Okay.
There was 2 on your.
All right, so H. All right, and then what'd you say,
The ice, amended,
amendment to the ice
Ice
rink?
rink.
yeah, the dollar amount was still changed.
So H, that would be I, so ice rink amendment.
Probably to purchase the ice rink, I would think.
Purchase.
But there must be a change.
Oh,
Because he
okay.
just called me
Okay.
to ask. I don't know what it is.
Gotcha.
All right, so we have the ordinance for H and the amendment to the purchase on the ice rink. I think that's all we have. So, anyone else have anything they'd like to add or remove? Make a motion, approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the announcements and communications. Anyone have any announcements?
I have one. Just, your tax bills went out on last Wednesday, so if you don't get that love note from me, you might want to call the office and make sure that you obtain your winter tax bills. It can be due, it's actually due February 14th of 2020, but a lot of people like to pay it by December 31st for their income tax reasons, so that's totally up to you. But they went out in the mail.
I have one.
Go ahead, John.
On this day in 1927, the first Model A Ford was sold for $385. That's it.
$385.
It went up a little.
These are long gone. Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none, we're going to move to the call to the public. This is when you can come up and talk for a couple minutes on non-agenda related items. Anyone like to come up and talk to the board on anything? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to move on to the reports. Tina, DDA report?
Yep. Good evening, everyone. I have 7 items to report on. First of all, I passed out earlier a recap. It's a chart that is showing you the 2019 year-to-date recap of the commercial and industrial construction values. So for the month of November, we've had an investment of $4,391,000. And then as a total, from January through November of this year, over $45 million has been invested in our commercial and industrial developments. So it looks like we're going to end on a very strong note. And of that $45 million, it's important to note that the $24 million that's showing in January was the ZEIS project. So it's a very large, very important project for our community. And then also, the Lyon Township has been identified again by the University of Michigan iLabs. This is part of their eCities Community Evaluation for Economic Development. It is the 5th consecutive year that we've earned a 5-star designation. Each year, U of M study examines 11 data points related to growth and economic development. These are metrics that impact the business community specifically here in Lyon Township. We do utilize best practices when it comes to economic development, and that is why we have been recognized for 5 years running. So we're very excited about that designation. The DDA also approved 2 facade improvement grants recently for 56808 Grand River. One was for $1,965 and the other for $2,990. These are facade improvements to the former Bonnerose building. We're very excited about the changes that they've made. The Design and Appearance Committee is responsible for reviewing and making recommendations on those grant applications. And that committee is also going to be doing some work on the Property Rehabilitation Improvement Program itself, making some reviews and making recommendations to the DDA board in 2020. So we'll be reporting back on that. Early feedback is showing a successful Shop Small Saturday that occurred this past Saturday, November 30th. This is a program designed to promote shoppers during the holiday festivities to shop at our small businesses. We had posters and promotional material that was delivered to over 80 retailers and restaurants in our community supporting this event, and numerous businesses highlighted special offers and holiday deals throughout the weekend. So we're really excited about promoting that. The DDA Economic Restructuring Committee will be conducting a review of their current tax abatement policy. We thought it might be a good idea to take a look back on what we've done over the past couple of years and provide a recap to the Township Board on where our abatements stand, how many companies are participating in that program, and also if there's any recommendations we want to make to the scorecard, all of that. So we'll be reporting back to you in early 2020 with some recommendations. The promotion of festival events. The Lyon Events Organization is now accepting sponsorships for the 12th annual Kite Festival. So we're thinking about June and December. But that festival will be held on June 6th and 7th. They'll be sending out letters of sponsorship requests to over 500 businesses. So we're hoping to get some more folks involved in that. And lastly, I'd like to encourage our citizens to, especially ones that are online, to like the Lyon Township Downtown Development Facebook page, as well as the Lyon Works Facebook page and the Township Facebook page. These are great resources for folks if they want to learn more about what's going on, and we're always excited to have more and more people sign up for that. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Tina. Any questions for Tina? All right, moving on. Chief Van.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Just realizing I probably should have wrote a script for this, but really pleased tonight. It's a special night for not just our fire department, but for the entire township. And I just want to thank the board for all the support and the vision as we have hired our first 6 full-time firefighters, 4 firefighters and 2 captains. And their first shift was this past Friday after Thanksgiving. And after years or just having shifts that have been uncovered and hoping something big doesn't happen, to provide the 24/7, 365 coverage to the township is a great task, and I'm proud to be part of it. But again, I want to thank you for your role in this as well. And what I'd like to do is we just had a swearing-in ceremony, which can take a few minutes, so I didn't want to take up too much time, but their families are here, and I'd like to introduce the firefighters. And as I introduce them, if they would stand up along with their family, and then I'll bring all the firefighters up at once.
And once they come up, do you want me to just do one group swearing in? That way
I
they
think
have that picture?
that'd be great.
Okay.
Yep,
That would be great.
thank you. Okay, so I'd like to introduce firefighter Chad Chimay. And your family, right here, okay. And next, firefighter Douglas Mobes. We have firefighter Alan, or affectionately known as AJ Hamilton, sometimes affectionately. And we have firefighter Tom Arnold, or Thomas Arnold. Terrific. Yeah, that's a good place to thank you again. And after the rough process we went through, or not the rough, the rigorous process that we went through with the assessment center, we did promote 2 captains, and they will begin in January. And each one of them will have the unit that they've already been assigned to with the firefighters. So I'd like to introduce Captain David Haven. And Captain Nate Sturos.
Great job.
Now, we still have the full complement of part-time and paid-on-call firefighters that we have had, and they will still continue to be an integral part of this department, as they always have been. This just provides that assurance that we have coverage at all times. And I'm proud of all of these guys, and these are your new firefighters from Lyon Township.
They all want to come up here?
You guys want to come back out here?
Stand this way so the crowd can see you. And I'll just, I'll have you raise, if you want to stand back a little bit, I'll just have you. Okay, if you'd all like to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
That I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and I will faithfully perform the duties
and I will faithfully perform the duties
of the office of full-time firefighter and captains
of the office of full-time firefighter
in and for the Township of Lyon,
and for the Township of Lyon,
County of Oakland,
County of Oakland,
and State of Michigan,
and State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was that we are conducting CPR training for the public, which we haven't done in a long time. And that will be, I believe this Thursday. Wednesday. Either way, we're really close to having that class full, and we're going to plan on offering those courses now quarterly, as long as the public wants it. So, and that concludes my report, and I thank you again.
Thank you, Chief. All right, Lieutenant Whitfield. How are you doing?
Pretty good, sir. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
There have been a lot of major incidents that have taken place since the last time we spoke. However, I can only talk about one right now. The Lyon Township deputies were involved in a bit of a pursuit. An individual went into the Walmart store, stole about $600 worth of merchandise, and was met by the deputy when he arrived at his car. The suspect crashed into the unoccupied vehicle behind him, and the pursuit began. It lasted for approximately 3 minutes around the Walmart complex. It ultimately ended when the violator crashed into the embankment behind Starbucks, and he was taken into custody after a brief foot pursuit. You'll be happy to know he's in Oakland County on a variety of felony charges, so we did well on that one. And also, we have Shop with a Cop this month, and I'd like to invite all of you to come out if you have the opportunity. It's going to be on December 19th, starting at 1 p.m., but the kids usually don't come in until around 3 or 4. So if you have some free time, feel free to stop by. It's just a great event that we sponsor. Thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant. Thank you very much. Moving on to the Planning Commission. Anything going on there, Patty?
Yep, we had 2 meetings in the month of November. The first one was Tuesday, November 12th. We held 3 public hearings. One was Jiffy Lube Special Land Use, which is on tonight's agenda, and Jiffy Lube Site Plan. The special land use is recommended to the board. The site plan was recommended for approval. We also had a text amendment for collection bins, and Brian is still working. We still had a little bit of change on that, and with the help of Carol's office. That was that meeting. Then we had, our second meeting was Monday, November 25th. We also had 3 public hearings, special land use for Burger King, a site plan for Burger King, and a parallel plan text amendment, which we're still working on. We had a few changes on that. The Burger King special land use was recommended to the board, but the site plan still needed improvement. They needed to come back for a couple things. And then under old business, we had the new Hudson Medical Site Plan, which was approved. Oh my gosh, the building's beautiful. You'll be really impressed. And that concludes my report.
Okay, any questions? All right, moving on to ZBA. Lisa, anything?
Sadly, our last meeting was in September, and so I'm feeling a little lonely. You don't have one this month either, so.
Man, slacking. All right, moving on to Park Advisory Board. Robert, stand up there, big guy.
We actually had a member of the public attend our meeting, so that was cool.
Hey,
we had
moving in the
some
right
good
direction.
interaction there. And, we also had a guest presentation from Holly on what the library's been up to and looking at any possible collaborations. Out of that came an idea for possibly doing some sort of recreational equipment rental, since they've expanded to have these different kits that they're allowing people to check out now, and possibility of, like, if we put in a horseshoe pit, for example, go to the library, check out the horseshoes for a week or something. Other than that, we'll get to the ice rink later. It's just a small change order. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds good, Robert. Thank you. Moving on, DPW, Bob.
Thank you, John. We have finished winterizing our fire hydrants for the year. We are continuing with our cross-connection inspection and survey within the commercialized and the residential neighborhoods. And since Flint, DEQ, which is now Eagle, is really amped up, and we are required to submit a report by the end of this year as far as lead and copper concerns our community. And what that means is we're doing an inventory of any homes that are on the water system that were built prior to 1988, and we have to develop a plan on how to inspect those homes to show that there was no lead or copper lines tied, or lead lines actually, tied to that house. And we finished that report today, and everything's good. So that concludes my report for the month, John.
Perfect, thanks, Bob. All right, tonight, we're moving on to the public hearing part of our meeting, and we do have two public hearings tonight. The first one is the Community Development Block Grant Program Year 2020. And before we open that public hearing, I'm going to have Brian explain just exactly what the program is. Brian, you want to go ahead and explain that?
Thank you, John. The CDBG...
You might have to pull your, I can't.
Even closer. The CDBG program is the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is funded out of HUD, a federally funded program, but locally administered by the county, and then in cooperation with the township, we help organize specific programs based on a large amount of criteria. For the past 4 years, for the past years, we've been establishing 4 different projects associated with the CDBG funding. One is services for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. It was previously known as battered and abused spouses. We've also prepared a program for the Senior Center to provide access to the Center for Active Adults. We provide youth assistance for things like summer camps, trainings, wellness programs, those sorts of activities through South Lyon Area Youth Assistance. And then we run a minor home repair program for low to moderate income households with repairs of up to $5,000. Now, associated with this program, we don't actually get the final dollar amount that the township will receive for these programs until later, and we've been instructed to utilize last year's allocation for this, for the public hearing and for budgeting for these programs. You'll note in your packet you've got 2 letters, one from Haven and one from South Lyon Area Youth Assistance. The letter from Haven is requesting $3,000 for this program, and you'll note in the letter and in the hearing notice that we're recommending $3,500 for that program. And the rationale for that is the county has set a minimum of $3,500 per program. So that's the minimum that we can allocate to be eligible for the programs through the county. The South Lyon Area Youth Assistance has requested $10,000 as part of this program. We are recommending retaining the same amount as was spent last year, although we do note that this program has expanded in terms of the number of requests that they're getting for the future. So it may be an opportunity if we are allocated more money than the $32,000 and change that was noticed for. It may be a place to put that additional funding, but changes to these recommendations will be figured out as that actual allocation comes. Any specific questions from the board?
Before we open the public hearing, does the board have any questions for Brian?
Yeah, I do have one. If we find out that we're going to have more funds allocated, it won't be just necessarily distributed as these funds have been. We'll have that conversation at that time and then decide, you know, for example, your recommendation for youth assistance sounds great to me, but that'll be something that we have to discuss again. Is that
my understanding is it's got to come back to the board
to reapprove? Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
So everyone kind of understand what we're doing there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that.
I just
go
had a
ahead.
question to clarify. So it says in the letter from South Lyon Area Youth Assistance that they're respectfully requesting $10,000 in addition to that $32,227?
No.
I'm just trying to understand the two
We do give them a total of 10. We allocated in our budget what is given from the CDBG funds, and then we usually make up the difference. They did ask, I think that they would like to have a total of 10 additional from us, but that's up to the board to decide.
So is that part of the resolution?
We can talk about that during the resolution, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, no other questions, and I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:25 on the CDBG funds. If anyone in the audience would like to stand up and ask any questions about that fund, or anything at all, it's time to stand up and... Okay, seeing no one, we're going to close the public hearing at 7:25. All right, our second public hearing is our yearly budget public hearing, and this is just an opportunity for the public to stand up if they have any questions. We've had a workshop on our budget. Our budget is in very, very, very good shape, and it's just a time that you can come up and ask questions about the budget if you have any. And that being said, I'd like to open that public hearing for the budget at 7:26. And anyone would like to come up and ask any questions, now's the time. All right, seeing no one standing up to talk about it, we're going to close the public hearing at 7:26. All right, we're going to move on now to unfinished business, and the first item is the Artesian Pioneer Water discussion, and I think, Bob, you've got
Yep.
a few things to talk about there.
Yeah, let's start with the existing plant, the Woodwind plant. It's running extremely well, and our water usage is at about 800,000 gallons a day right now, and we're pushing iron at a level of about 0.4, which is just a terrific number, and we couldn't be happier with that. Let's move on to the South Hill plant. As you know, it's under construction. We're approximately 80% done, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that plant go online early in the new year. We don't have an exact date yet, but it'll be totally ready for us by spring of this coming year. It's fine because we don't need it right now. We're meeting all of our demands, and then we're going to talk about the water tower that everybody's excited to see finally go online. We started filling it again, and we're at about 30 feet, I believe, John? Isn't that what we heard today? We're putting water in it each day, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that water tower go online, so it will be under use within a week to 10 days. So that's how close we are on that.
Yeah, we're getting very, very close to putting
Yeah,
that on.
very close.
I don't know if any of you have had a chance to go out there and take a look at the driveways poured. Very nice job. The watering station has been poured, the pipe structure has been put up there. I mean, everything's moving along at a pretty good pace for the
Yeah.
time of the year. Any questions?
No, just the same one each month on the softening, if any progress has been made on that. I know he's not here, but
I think Ed would have to speak to that, but I think we're about the same where we've been in the past, Chris.
okay. If it's possible, if he's here for the next meeting, or at least something that can be emailed to the board, maybe a schedule on getting that completed.
He's going to tell you exactly what I'm going to tell you right now. It's totally a DEQ situation. We have not gotten the okay from the DEQ. We have went through every single step that we possibly can. We're exhausting many, many options. We're down to a pellet, possibly a pellet softening plant, and we really do not want to go that route just because of the way
Labor
it's operated.
intensive.
It's going to be intense for maintenance, and so we're getting to a place where it's not a good place.
Yeah.
And we're still fighting. That's all I can say. We have meetings every day. We really, he wouldn't be able to tell you any more than I just told you. He's working at it, and that's all he can do.
I speak to many residents about the topic too, because
So do
we
I.
get calls, yeah.
And believe me, that's exactly what we want to do. I mean, you're not the only one on the board that wants to do that.
Yeah.
We ask them questions every single day. It's just that the DEQ stands its ground pretty tough, and we've still got options, and that's all I can say.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the fire insurance withholding resolution, and I'm going to throw this one right over
I
to
guess
Carol.
this is to me. Well, I sent you all the information last month when I could not be here. Essentially, this is a statute that was put into place to really assist municipalities in events where a structure has been destroyed. And what happens in many cases is the insured takes the check and runs, leaving the municipality with a structure that either has to be demolished or repaired or something, okay? So the program allows, if you adopt a resolution participating in the program, you go on a list at the state. And one of the things I did in between the meetings was I sent to the officials the current list that the state has, and you would see by looking at it that a vast majority of municipalities are participating in this program. I understand that there was some concern that this was sort of overreaching or something like that, but it's really not. It's simply to protect the township from having to spend general funds to demolish a structure after someone has taken their check and just walked away from it. And it further protects you because you can go ahead and demolish a structure and place a lien on the property, but if the property goes to foreclosure, you're never going to see that lien paid. So that's the purpose of this program. I would recommend you do it, but certainly it's up to you. It's just for your protection.
Okay. I know that there's been a few people asking me some questions about it, and I'd like them to ask you the questions. I mean, John, you had a few questions, and if you want to go ahead.
Well, you addressed the one. I said it could be placed in the tax rules if they don't perform. Also, we've got a couple items on our agenda yet with the building department. They have to deal with the building department, post bond, etc., before they can get a permit. Is that not correct?
But they can get the check from the insurance company and never come in and apply for a permit from you. I mean, there's a disconnect there. The insurance company will go out and say, okay, you've been totally destroyed, here's your check. They take their check. They may just say, you know what, forget it. They move somewhere else, and you're left with a building that's half burned. That's really what the statute is meant to address, is those situations.
Carol, in that case, if there's a mortgage, the mortgage company would have ownership of the house and would resolve that, because I don't like this. And in the case where there is no mortgage, then there's probably quite a bit of equity, in which case we'll get our money back. So I feel like this hasn't happened here. I can't see it really playing out this way very often, and I feel like it's, a reach every time there's a fire to be collecting funds from people and holding it. I think is
I can't tell you from
unnecessary.
past experience, the mortgage company doesn't necessarily step in, okay? At that point, their interest has been destroyed, or they've received their portion of the payment from the insurance company. They don't care. All right, so I've seen that happen before, but it's, you're not taking anything from anybody, because once they do the work or it's demolished, they get that money, okay? It's not like we're taking something that they never receive. It's just assurance that they will do what they're supposed to do with the insurance proceeds instead of sticking you with it. So, but again, it's your choice. I mean, not 100% of the communities participate, but I can tell you the majority of them do, so.
And so, just to clarify, the maximum amount that the township could withhold is the $12,746, which would roughly be a cost to cover a complete demo. It's not like a $200,000 or $300,000 home burns down. They get a check to $300,000. We're keeping $300,000.
No,
keeping $12,000.
no, that's the max you can keep. That's just sort of enough to let you go in and demo it.
Okay.
So, and certainly if they're beginning their repairs, they've come in and they've pulled building permits and they're starting to do their repairs, you can have it released because you see they're repairing it. This is really to protect you in that situation where they just take the check and walk away. And that happens more often than you know.
Well, I
So-
can see that happening in certain neighborhoods. Fortunately, I don't think we have too much to worry about that yet.
Famous last words, right?
Yeah.
Again,
I
it's,
said yes.
it's a tool that was available to you. I wanted you to have the option, but it's totally your choice.
So just so I understand it also, Carol, so you're saying that we don't have to take the $12,746. We can just tell the insurance they're good for it, give it to them, or is it an automatic withdrawal from their insurance
I
company?
think they automatically withdraw it, but at that point, depending on what's going on, you could automatically pay it back to them if they're moving forward to do the work they should be doing. Or you could call them and say, they've pulled the permits, they're doing the work, you don't need to send us the withholding. You know, there's always a little time delay in those things.
I think my worry on this whole thing is that when something burns and you lose a home, you're already freaking out. And to have something come out of a check that I don't know. I don't know.
I have a question about when a structure burns and we're talking about demolition, is it within a property owner's right to demolish it himself? Or do they have to hire a company? Is
Well,
there
they
an
have to get a
ordinance?
demolition permit, and I don't think you'd let Joe Blow go in and just start taking a sledgehammer to it. I mean, there's a certain way the building has to be demolished. So,
So I'm just wondering that if somebody happens to have a background in that and, you know, he or she wants to demolish his, like the remaining, when they pull a demolition permit, does this, if they're qualified to do it,
if they're qualified to, if they get a permit, they're qualified to do it, and they pass the inspections, it doesn't matter,
okay.
you know?
Usually have to have utilities shut off.
Yeah, see, that's part of,
all
you have to
that
make
stuff
sure
in order to
everything's been
get-
shut off and
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
I just didn't know if this would then require them, if they, to use a company, even if they had the experience
No.
and expertise to do it themselves.
No.
Okay. Well, this is totally, like Carol says, up to this board. If you'd like to put this resolution in place, then we need a motion. If not, we need a motion to not put it in place. Patty? Anything?
Or you don't even, if you don't want to pass it, just don't
Just-
adopt it.
Well, this is first read, we tabled it, right?
It's just a resolution,
Oh, I see.
yeah.
So we don't need, it's not an ordinance, we don't need
No.
2 readings, okay.
No.
Anybody?
And if you don't want to move forward with it, we can just move on. So
Just
it
move
just
on?
depends, yeah, if
All right.
nobody's in favor of it.
Well, give me a nod here, folks. You want to move on, or do you want to make a motion for this resolution?
Move on.
I think
All
we
right.
move on.
I don't
Okay.
want to take someone's money.
Let's move on. Let's move on to new business. This is the resolution adopting the program year 2020 Community Development Block Grant Application, Resolution 2019-26.
Make a motion to adopt resolution 2019-26.
I'll support.
All right, we have a motion and support, but I do have one question. I think, Lisa, you had a question too. So before we go ahead with the motion here, I'd like to ask the board, the senior center, at the senior center, we are a little underfunded compared to the other municipalities involved. At Green Oak Township, they don't have the grant funds like we do. And they put in about $25,000 on their participation right out of their general fund. Or $22,000, I think it is. And they have less participants at the senior center than we do. Do you have the numbers with you? I didn't come prepared with the numbers, but we moved quite a bit. We went from, I think it was a few hundred seniors that were using this place to like over 500.
We're at 550 for the last program, 540 for the last program year. I don't have the previous years available.
And they try to fund these by the use because it's free to the seniors of the township. Go ahead, Patty.
But I think this is our CDBG funds.
Yes.
If we approve these, we would add that in our budget.
Right.
So put the extra money in
That's what I'm talking
for,
Youth
youth
assistance
assistance and senior center,
Mhm.
if the board wanted
Wants
to.
to do that.
Are those communities gonna match our school resource officer contribution?
Well, the only one
I
we're
was just
talking,
wondering, because while we're getting everything equal, I just thought I'd throw it out there. I'm not, that's,
this is our seniors.
that's right. And the other ones are kids, so I was just, that was more a
And I'm
question
for
for them,
funding
not
all
for
of
you.
that.
I know.
More
I'm
money
for
for the
funding all that.
seniors.
I'm inviting them to be equal partners.
Well, I'm just asking if you guys
Sure.
would be willing to do another 5,000 towards this program. And
Absolutely.
I mean, we're the biggest community, so I think that we should be paying our fair share. We probably have quite a number of seniors comparatively, probably more seniors comparatively, so seems reasonable.
I guess I have a question then to kind of go back with what Sean had said. How do we, I mean, do we just take the money that is put into these different funds, whether it's the Southline Youth Assistance, does it all go into one pot only to be used, and it's distributed evenly to any of these other, the seniors, or it could be to the youth for tutoring, or is it like, all right, the township contribution goes only to a township resident who is like a senior citizen whose fees would be for the senior center? I mean, do we track that? Do we?
Yeah, we do track it.
But
That's
is
what
it-
he's saying.
We get a bill on a regular basis
Really
from the
detailed.
provider that says we've assisted X amount of residents during this funding cycle. And so we get that bill, Michelle issues a check to them, and then we get reimbursed by the county and in turn HUD. So
But is it based on, this is the number of recipients, township residents, and that, or is it just
Yes.
any residents?
No, it's township
Township.
residents.
Township
They
only,
base it
yeah.
on township. That's why I was saying that it was about 200 not too long ago. We're up to 550. It's very successful. A lot of seniors use it, and it's just really successful.
We used
So
to
if
buy
we-
the senior swim passes back in the day. We used to provide that too. But they did away with that.
So if we add these additional funds that you're requesting.
Well, I'm
and
just
it comes-
asking.
Well, asking.
It's totally up to the board.
So if we provide those funds that you're asking, if it's not a township resident, then it's not really going anywhere. I mean, it's just still sitting there, right, in the fund?
It gets
It's only
used
for
by the
our
senior
township
center.
residents.
Yeah.
Right.
Only.
But the senior center is generally behind on us all the time.
Okay, I was just trying to clarify, is it, if
It's
it's
basically,
not,
they do the best they can to track it,
right,
but it's really, it's hard to track because of the way the addresses are and the
It's
township's
gotten better,
addresses
though.
right.
and the
It's
city
gotten a lot
addresses.
better.
But
Yeah.
I guess I'm not asking the question well at all, and I'm sorry. So if we add in additional money,
Which,
and
okay,
then,
which we do for the youth assistance. We've
Right.
decided we've got a $10,000 budget, so the $3,951 will come out of that to pay this, for the CDBG, we'll pay that.
right,
Then we give them a check, $6,049 last year,
right,
to cover any additional expenses that they can't do through the youth services, but they know there's a need.
right.
So that's what that's making up for. In the senior center, I don't know what else I don't know how that works with them being made that way.
On the senior center, at the end of the year, they basically have $117 left.
Oh, for their whole budget?
Right.
Their entire budget, okay.
And so they're scraping.
Right.
And to me, the city of South Lyon, I believe, puts in, what, 45,000, I think is their number. And I think Greeno puts in 22,000, and we put in 18. And I think the city's first in participation, then we're next, and then Green Oak is last. And it's only because it sets in the city. So a lot of the city people use it quite a bit, but it's all monitored. And I'm just trying to, if believe me, we can keep it 18. I mean, that's
No, I'm-
totally up to you guys.
Well, it has to be 18 in this.
In the
Right. Yeah,
CDG,
this-
but
yeah,
I'm
that's
talking
what-
about
that's our
5,000
portion.
more.
We can talk about that in the
Budget.
Yeah.
okay, I'm
Okay.
gonna take a shot at re-asking our question. So, assuming we use up our 18,191, yet we
Yep.
still have residents participating in the program, that gets pulled out of whatever additional funding. But if we don't have additional residents. Like, we don't use up our allocation, that money is still going to be part of their total budget and could be used by
Right. Yeah.
residents outside of Lyon Township.
Much
Is that
better.
right?
Yes,
That's
thank
what you
you.
were asking? Okay.
Yes, I was
And-
trying
and-
really hard to ask that, but.
And also, they never turn them away. So if your allocation is used up, they still let them in.
Right.
So it works both ways.
John, I do have some population information. It's available through SEMCOG. So in 2015, they had reported that there were 1,288 seniors in the city of South Lyon, 1,202 seniors in Lyon Township, and a little over 1,800 in Green Oak. So it just gives you an idea from,
Yeah, a lot of the Green Oak don't participate in the South Lyon Senior Center. I'm not sure why.
so we're pretty comparable between the city and the township.
All right, well, I did get this off base a little bit. This is about the CDGB fund, so we've approved what it is set up here.
So we have a motion by Sean and second by
Patty.
Patty.
All right, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on then. All right, that brings us to the consideration of approval of a settlement agreement with Continental Aluminum to resolve outstanding disputes between the parties. You know what, I'm gonna let Carol start this one out. Carol, you wanna?
Okay, I think what I'm going to do is sort of go through a little background of how we got where we are today. And starting with a little history, as you all know, Continental Aluminum, I have a hard time saying that, so I'm just going to refer to you as CA, okay? You opened in 1996, and at that time, the property was Zone I2 Heavy Industrial, which would allow outside storage. Shortly thereafter, there were complaints from the residents about operations. And in 1998, CA applied to amend the site plan to expand, and that was also approved by the township. Based on resident complaints from approximately 2000 through about 2002, the township issued CA a number of ordinance violations related to noise, odor, and outside storage. And I've talked to the former township prosecutor a few times about this, and he has confirmed that every single one of those wasn't dismissed in favor of Continental Aluminum. In addition, the court held in one of the proceedings that a portion of the township code was vague and unconstitutional relating to having to keep things in a fully enclosed building. In 2001, the township rezoned the property from A1 to A2. And during that time frame, the township and residents wrote letters to the state about the operations. In 2002, the residents filed a class action against CA, and this was resolved under confidential settlement, and obviously I don't know what the terms of that were. Sometime in 2002, there was a fire at the plant, and the township initially disputed whether the building had been damaged by more than 50%, which would have meant that it could not be rebuilt. Based upon that, the township refused to issue permits. The CA applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they granted a variance or agreed that the damage was less than 50%, found it was only 25 to 30%, which would have entitled CA to rebuild. However, the ZBA placed a couple conditions on their approval. First was that they would be only permitted to use the property in conformance with the I-1 classification, regardless of the fact that they were I-2 when they went in there. And secondly, that the township reserved the right to terminate their use at any time. So based upon that, CA filed suit and sought a declaratory judgment that those conditions were unlawful, and also sought damages based upon an alleged loss of profits of $40,000 per day. In that case, CA's motion for summary disposition was granted. They won the case. The court determined the conditions were unlawful, that they had a vested right to continue, and outside storage was also a portion of that case. And in addition, they were awarded money damages for their lost profits. So that's kind of the background history. In other words, the township through the years tried numerous times different enforcement actions and was not successful in any of them, okay? So the bottom line is they exist there as a lawful use, and that use includes outside storage. But through the years, the outside storage has sort of expanded and moved around, and the township's been very concerned about how it looks. So sometime around 2015, the township approached CA about, let's talk about this and see if we can work something out to make it look better on site. Unbeknownst to CA at the time, the township had also instituted proceedings to rezone the property to mixed use, which would have made their use just totally out of compliance with the ordinance. So while the discussions were going on, the rezoning took place, and because of that, there were discussions about, okay, well, we've got this potential lawsuit against you now based upon the rezoning. You've zoned the property in a way that renders our, that is unconstitutional as applied to our property, but we're still willing to talk and see if we can resolve things. Those discussions continued through some point in 2016, and the township actually entered into a tolling agreement with Continental Aluminum. And what that means is that Continental Aluminum's claims against the township were tolled. In other words, they did not have to file their claims within the period of the statute of limitations, which would have been 3 years. That tolling agreement had no termination date. So as it stands today, they can still file suit against the township for that rezoning to mixed use. We then took up negotiations again more recently, trying to figure out how we could clean the property up and make it look better, with the residents in mind. Instead of these things being scattered all over on the grounds, how could we confine them into an enclosed building and make things look a lot better? So we, after discussions, came up with a plan, which Brian will run through with you briefly tonight, that's going to result in a lot of what you see outdoor on the site now being enclosed. And if the township board is agreeable to that plan, in return, they're willing to waive all their claims against the township up to the point of settling the matter tonight. So they would not sue you over the rezoning, and from here on out, the parties would move forward. The township would also waive claims they have up to this point, but quite frankly, we haven't been successful in any of our claims so far to date. Point of clarification, if something happens next week, that's not covered by the settlement agreement, okay? So it does not bar the township in the future from taking some kind of enforcement against Continental Aluminum if there's an ordinance violation in the future. All it does is take what exists up to this date, get rid of their claims against us, and attempt to clean up the property. So that's what's before you tonight is a proposed settlement agreement. And Brian, maybe you can point out the pertinent points.
Okay, in your packets, you do have a site plan and some architectural details on the plan. The large rectangle on the south side or on the bottom portion of the site plan is the existing structure today. You'll note that, let's see if the mouse works. There are two proposed structures that would go on the site to contain the majority of the outside storage. The first would be a accessory barn, which is right up in this location. So it's behind the berm, behind the landscaping. It is approximately, it's just under 12,000 square feet in size for that structure. So just storage, no bathroom facilities, no kitchens, any of that kind of thing would be in there. There is also a proposed loafing shed, and I'll show you what that is along the back side, along the trail here. And then on the site plan, there's also some notations for outdoor storage in the rear. But one of the things that we've requested and worked with Continental on is making sure that the fire lane is painted. That's one of the main complaints that we get from the fire marshal, that he has an issue getting through there from time to time, depending on what's outside. So we've requested that those lines be painted so that any temporary outdoor storage gets located outside of those. Included in the packet is the example of the loafing shed that would be on the rear of the building. It's open on one side so that materials can be pushed in from the one side, shielded from the back. And then the pole barn structure itself is pretty nondescript. The outside is intended to match the existing structure in terms of color and material. As far as setbacks and dimensions, all of these structures comply with both the mixed-use district standards and the industrial district standards. Same thing for lot coverage. In terms of building height, the pole barn structure is 31 feet to the peak. The loafing structure is about 19 feet to the peak. No other changes are proposed to the site plan in terms of dumpster location, HVAC, any of those types of things that are typically considered in a site plan. No changes to parking or circulation. You'll note that all of the trucks and employee parking that is on site today is still located on the asphalt pad in these locations here, hidden and screened behind the proposed pole barn. Similarly, there's no change to the landscaping. The material that's on the berm today is fully grown and does a adequate job of screening the site from Milford Road. Other than that, I would defer to the township engineer for standards on drainage or any of those sorts of issues. However, we do note that the structures as they're proposed can comply with applicable regulations that would normally be applicable to the site.
Are the views on that shed labeled correctly?
What do you say?
No, that's a good point, John. This view here is the south side. West side, north, and east.
I thought so.
Okay, Leslie, did you have anything to add?
The applicant has addressed the concerns that are in the letter in your packet. I received the plans, I think today, or over the weekend, but I'm satisfied.
Okay. So the applicants, so you guys are here. Does the board have any questions? Do everybody understand what's going on here?
I'll wait on questions.
Well, I have some questions, but I don't know if.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and ask the questions first? Is it to the applicant?
It's to whomever.
Well, why don't you come on up and
It's a free for
introduce yourself?
And I don't know that I can answer your questions because a lot of them might relate to the plan itself, but let me introduce myself. I'm Pat Lennon. I'm an attorney with the Honeyman firm here on behalf of Continental Aluminum. And as I know you've all heard, it's been kind of a long road. You know, this company and this township have had a history. And one thing we're happy to hopefully do tonight is turn the page and move forward into a brighter future. And we think that the long process that we went through, I think that will help us as we move ahead. And what you're seeing today is the culmination of a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of revisions to drawings and, you know, working together and understanding that everyone's in a situation where they can't always get everything they want, but maybe they get enough to make things a lot better as they go forward. And we hope when you look at the holistic result of this process, that you'll agree that it's better for the township, it's better for the community, and it's something that we believe is should be acceptable to everyone. And we'd love to answer your questions. Again, I'm Pat Lennon. Mark Bushner from the plant is here. Our engineer from SME, Kurt Anderson, is here, and we'd love to help any way we can.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, go ahead.
I guess maybe these might be for the fire marshal or the fire department or a building. Do the items that will be stored in the barn, do they need to be in some way recorded with the fire department as to what is in there? Are they flammable? Are there regulations that we have so that if there is a fire in that location, that our firefighters know what is already stored there? Is there, like, do you communicate that?
The intention is for it just to be solid pieces of aluminum, maybe some small packaging materials like wood skids or plastic bags, but nothing combustible or scary.
And if it gives you comfort.
So no haunted house in there?
No. But if it gives you some comfort, we're not released from any of the fire code obligations. We still have to comply with those,
Okay.
whatever those are.
And then, so are there limitations to what could be stored in that pole barn, or is that all within the building department?
It would all be building code. The zoning doesn't look at what's
Okay.
stored inside other than those hazardous materials, which are not an issue in this instance.
Okay, and then you mentioned that there's no, like, bathroom facilities or anything in there, but, I mean, I'm assuming that there's lighting. Is there heat within this pole barn? Is this gonna be a fully sprinkled, or fire suppressed building?
Does it have to
Is that
be
a requirement?
It's been designed to be underneath the 12,000 square foot requirement for suppression.
Okay.
It's still optional, but my understanding is that it will not be. But in terms of other things like heating and lighting and all of those will all fall under building review.
Okay. And then I just wanted to clarify what Carol had said, that this, if in the future there is any kind of odor, noise, or storage violation, this agreement does not prevent the township from following through on those complaints.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Lennon, would you agree with that?
I think the agreement speaks for itself. I don't know your ordinances, but we have to comply with your ordinances going forward, so whatever
Well,
those.
she's simply asking if in a year from now, let's say there's a serious odor problem.
Yeah, if it
That's
violates
not covered by this agreement.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's my
okay.
understanding.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's reiterated from what was said earlier. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Lise. John?
I just wanted to comment on they could make a lot of friends if they could do something. I know they're trying to contain the order, but they're not doing a real good job. Nature of the business, I'm afraid, but I wish they would really work harder on that. And you'd make a lot of people happy. That's all I have.
Okay. Any permission?
No, I was just going to reiterate or agree with John Hicks, is that living right there for so long, I guess I just have a issue of how it gets so smelly and so stinky. And I know a lot of it has to do with the weather, that it holds a lot of that down. When it's foggy or anything, it just seems like the odors are still really bad, and it's just a shame that there can't be any type of...
We are still working on them.
Okay.
And we've invested over $2.6 million in the last 3 years.
I know it has gotten better, but I mean, people that are still coming in and complaining. It's
Why
just...
don't you step up to the podium and
Come
give
on
your
up,
name
Mark.
and everything for the record?
My name is Mark Buckner. I've been with Continental now for 8 years. I understand all the past, there's nothing in any of that for anybody to be proud about. I will say, though, that we have made some good strides. We continue to try. We continue to try to engage with people in order to understand what their issues are. The best thing we can get is quick feedback if there is a problem. They are mechanical processes and things do break down. So when they do, the faster we know about it, the more likely we are to be able to find the root cause and address it and fix it. Sometimes, Mark, the new bylaw officer, has been great and bring those things to us quickly.
Right.
Sometimes if they go through Eagle or MDEQ, it might be 6 weeks before we even know that there was a problem. So we've done a lot of proactive things in the plant in order to try to monitor our processes so that we can see it before you have to see it, but we continue to work on it too.
Okay. I think that happened last time. It was, something happened, we had called right away and you had said, yes, there was a piece of equipment down, and that's what had caused the problem going over Milford Road.
And two, again, when I just look at the recent time frame that I've been involved here for the last 8 years and thinking about, the state things we're in between the relationships with the neighbors, the township, and just the environment around the plant in total, compared to whenever I come here now, it's completely different. We're not there yet, and we're still going to continue to work on it, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Good. All right, yeah, I'd like to say that, I know you don't have to put the building up because you have outdoor storage, which I think it's a good thing that you are putting this up, but I do think that the odors, you say it too, the odor's still there. We'd like to work on that as hard as you possibly can. I do take it in consideration that Carol said that the township has tried a lot of things and nothing's worked. So I would really like to try to come to a settlement to make it work for everyone. And I do think that this is kind of in the right direction. I mean, if you're hiding your outdoor storage, you don't really have to. But I think it's a good thing that you're trying.
And again, those investments that we've made over the last 3 years, they haven't been from a request from yourself or from the state. There are things that we looked at and said, you know what, times are different today than they were 20 years ago, and they need to be addressed.
And I will say one thing. I have heard from residents, and I won't say who, it has gotten better since you've been here. I mean, it's not perfect, but it has gotten better. Well, Patty?
I just agree with everyone that already spoke. We get complaints to the township, we still filter them over to you. And actually John takes most of the complaints as his job. So,
My job.
well, sorry, it kind of is. But, yeah, if you could continue to strive to make it better, because, we have human beings that live by there, and it's been very taxing on them, so, sometimes we smell it up here, so.
Go ahead, John.
When I
Are you done,
initially-
Patty? I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Go ahead, John.
When I initially planned, I thought maybe it would be better to shift the building a little further north away from the entrance, so it's not imposing. It's 31 feet high, but there are a couple of homeowners that are 50 feet away. So I don't know that that's a good idea.
We also tried to shove it in the screening.
Choke off the roadway slightly so that we could have the semi-parking and the employee parking behind the building, so that as people are driving down Milford Road,
Okay.
they would have a limited view into the corner. Also, with the Loken shed, the real purpose or the additional purposes that we thought of that were, obviously it's going to act as a good solid fence, but also with the roof level on it and the pitch towards the plant, if there are noises or problems back there, it's going to reflect them back into the plant and not across the marsh behind us.
Okay. I mean, the other things I had were just minor. I mean, the agreement will acknowledge that there is adequate screening now. It's been determined there's adequate screening now. There's mature landscaping, but that has to be, obviously maintained. I mean, I think we all understand that now, but in 10 years, if there's an issue, it should probably be documented somewhere specifically that either mature trees be replanted, which are expensive, or other means, other measures are employed to ensure that equal screening is provided.
It's mature enough now that there are trees that have been dying off over the last few years.
Yeah.
We've been replacing them as they go.
Yeah.
It hasn't been like a 20-foot tall mature tree, but I think we've been going with like 5-foot ones sprinkled in, and because they're moving.
Yeah. Seems like the corners are maybe the thinnest. On either corner of that berm, seems like that might be the area where if you were going to add anything, it would.
And a resident did speak with me today and request some more trees up on that berm.
Seems like there's a couple little ones, you could fit a couple little ones in, and I understand the cycle of it. I mean, if they're going to die off and you're planting them and, over a period of years, you're never going to have all tiny brand new trees. You're going to be, you're going to hopefully have a good green screen. The only other thing that's really minor, I mean, you've got some sort of a mesh on your fence, but it's, it's not really, I mean, the fence is what, 6 feet high? Is there a thicker fabric you can put on there? I mean, it doesn't really do much. I mean, there's it seems like a pretty minor thing, but that's the only thing I might add at this point is something that.
Talking along the trail or?
As you look into the property, to kind of just knock down the view shed into the site from the road.
Looking in from the front gate, a few years ago, we moved to automatic closing of the gate.
Right.
To help build screen, and the difficulty we ran into was we had put a solid piece on there, but the gate is so long that the wind had taken it and bent it in half.
So the wind load on, okay.
So that's why we had to go to those plastic pickets through to provide some level of screen, but I'll still allow the wind to get through.
Can I make a request? I can't hear.
Oh.
I can't hear that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry about that. No, go ahead.
I'm just requesting the board too, can you pull your microphones down because I can't hear that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess that was the only thing. If there are any other measures that can be taken to kind of thicken up that screening of the fence, it may even help as it goes kind of behind the berm there to the north to kind of knock some of that view down. I don't know offhand what that would be at this point, but I understand the wind load concern. And I don't know, it looks like, you know, you might be able to do that outside of the main posts, but maybe not on the gate itself, maybe something in between. So on either side of the drive,
Okay.
maybe to put a thicker mesh on. I mean, I'm sure that stuff's real cheap and easy to put up.
Sure.
I mean,
Yep.
that just might be some incremental benefit that is negligible in cost. But that's all I have right now.
Chris?
Just one comment to add to everyone else's, and it's fire related to the building then, or at least the fire route shown on the plans you mentioned was going to be striped, so it's not blocked. Since this building, through the International Fire Code, exceeds 30 feet, aerial apparatus is required, which it's shown on the plans, but for the outriggers on the aerial apparatus truck, you need 26 feet in width. So not necessarily the entire fire lane needs to be 26 feet wide, but there should be spots strategically around, you know, all four sides of the building that, you know, an aerial truck can lay out its outriggers in the event of a fire.
We'll talk to somebody.
It's just extra paint, so wherever you can kind of fit those in.
Yeah, in the south side and the side along Milford Road, it's going to remain free and open completely. We do currently, and for the last 2 years, have been driving trucks in the same route, semi-trucks around the building as the fire truck would take. So it's a daily occurrence today, and it's helped to smooth things out and also not block up the roadway and have truckers forced to back out onto the road. So.
Okay, as long as, like, yeah, if you have the whole east facade and the whole south facade, you know, unobstructed with parked vehicles or anything like that, then that would work.
The only thing I would add is I appreciate your efforts. I mean, I think a lot of the maybe nuisance issues in the past, though most of them probably predate many of us here, I think some of them may have come down to operational issues, so the efforts that you've taken, I appreciate. This isn't a flower garden. It can cause ripples and issues, and I get that, but I think I just encourage you to continue to work with the neighbors to, you know, again, make incremental improvements to whatever aspects you can improve in order to minimize the impact. And I understand you don't want to be impactful, you know, negatively on them, but I appreciate that, and I'd encourage you to continue that.
Yeah, and we're going to continue with all the engagement and events and funding that we've done over the past years. We're going to continue to walk along Milford Road and pick up trash 3 times a year and you know, support the charities that make the community so important.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. This time, I'd like to, anybody in the audience like to come up and talk about anything? Now's your time.
Robin Allen, 28550 Tyndale Trail. I didn't really want to say anything. This is kind of it's a difficult issue for me, you know, because I have complained about the outdoor storage. My concern is if this will have a detrimental impact on the value of our property. We want to sell our place. And right now, you know, we're in a bad situation. So Oh, and I want to give Mark credit. Since he came aboard 8 years ago, it has vastly improved over there. So I want to make a public statement stating that. Yeah, there's still issues, but compared to what went on in the past, it's much improved. My brother is not in favor of this. My brother and I own the property right next to Continental. I don't know where I fall on this. You know, it'd be nice, you know, not to have that outdoor storage, but I don't know if having a building that close to our property would be an improvement financial-wise or would be a detriment. So I don't know where I stand. I guess if I had to make a decision tonight, I would probably say I'm not in favor of it. You know, I don't know whether that's going to make any difference or not in your vote, but it's a tough issue. You know, I would not want to be in your, you know, sitting up there doing your job. You know, it's,
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, thank you.
So that's what I got to say.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All right. Seeing no one else, does anyone like to make a motion?
John, just to clarify, this may be for Carol, but so the intent of this, just to confirm my understanding, is all the outside storage will then be contained within the pole barn, well, within either of the two buildings.
With the exception of a little, maybe you can get up and explain this. There's a little bit that still be outside in that corner, across from the sheds, where there's currently, that's like the material that comes right out.
This back area, which will be concealed by the loafing shed in the building, so the intent was to choke it off, so that there still will be some things in and around back here, but to reduce the ability for it to be seen.
It's a significant reduction.
Yeah. And then everything up here is parking, either trucks or cars, parking, and it all moves over.
Carol, can you remind me, you said that initially it was I-2 where they were allowed to have outside storage.
Correct.
So they were falling, at that time, they were falling within were they legally non-conforming when it was switched to I-2?
They were I-2 when they went
Or
in.
I-1, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when they went, well,
I-2
Sort of.
96, right?
well, yeah, there's, how do I want to put this?
Sorry.
There's some question about the motives of the township in rezoning it to I-1. Okay? It appears it was done in response to resident complaints. And there's been some suggestion that the MU was done for the same reason. Okay? But the problem is, even after it was rezoned to I-1, the litigation took place after that, or tickets occurred after that. And in all of them, the court said, no, they can have the outside storage.
Okay.
So,
And the rationale was because they had initially been I-2?
yes.
Okay.
And I guess, this is really not intended to solve, the prior odor issues or noise issues or things like that. This is really intended to, let's clean up the site. Let's make it look better, okay, because they are gonna be there. Let's, get everything stored away in a building or tucked away somewhere where it has less of an impact on the residents. So that's the concept behind this.
I'd add to that one of the benefits, I think, for both of us is there's an approved site plan that everybody can look back at and say, this is the situation that both parties are agreeing as far as an operational situation. And so if we do get a residential complaint, that we can say, okay, this is what they're approved for. If you see something different, let us know, and vice versa. It's assurance to Continental that they can operate this and we're not going to bother them for minor complaints when the plan, when the site is still in compliance with the plan.
Okay?
Can I ask that,
Sure.
I mean, are you clear, or, I mean, I should say, are you comfortable with the level of detail on the plan where it shows outdoor storage? Are you comfortable that there's no confusion or question? Because I think in the moment, sometimes we think that we've got it, and then years go by, and then there's a question as to, and the other thing is that there is documentation that I've seen, obviously, that talks about the trees in front being mature screening. But I think some pictures should be taken and entered into the agreement. So, I mean, no one needs to hold a yardstick up in the air or anything, but I think there should be some pictures in the file so we can see what it looks like, unless someone's going to go out and do an evaluation of the actual caliper or height of these trees. So, but again, in 20 years, when none of us in this room are involved, we can see what it looked like. You know, I mean, I guess we have Google Earth and everything else, but I mean, I feel like it should be documented. You know, the extent of the mature landscaping should be documented, so when we want to compare it to something, we have a point of reference. I don't know if that's too much. It seems simple. I'm just asking for pictures to
Would you be adverse to the approval of the settlement agreement conditioned upon the maintenance of the mature landscaping?
It sounds okay in concept, but, you know,
Okay.
I mean, that's the intention.
I mean, that's how you're proposing it. You're proposing it
Right.
saying that you have sufficient screening, so all I'm saying is that their expectation per this agreement is that it's maintained.
And that's one of the reasons it was tucked there, because it would be tucked behind the screening,
I
so.
think conceptually we agree with
Okay.
whatever language that is, or if it's pictures, we have to.
Yeah, I don't know that we'd,
we gotta
well,
sort
we
of
can figure that out, but
Yeah.
they could just simply put as a condition of the execution of the settlement agreement that that be maintained
Yeah.
in the
Well,
motion.
we'd also have to agree to it, you know.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it's gonna be a problem.
Right, well,
It's probably not realistic to replace a 30-foot tree with a 30-foot tree.
Yeah, you
but
can't.
something in the
Yeah.
language
You
we
can't.
do that would allow it.
Right.
right. But I'm sure there's language that we
Well,
can come
can
up
talk
with.
about that tomorrow. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
And if it's.
But I think that's a valid point, because
I
it
don't
is,
disagree with the point.
yeah, so.
The, interpretation of it is enough.
Right.
I'd like that to be pretty specific, I think.
I think the intent is that, in 10 years, if everything ends up dying off, that, like, well, the agreement said that we were in compliance, we don't have to put any trees in there, and you're before us.
We agree with that intent, that we would have to keep the screening.
Keep the
Right.
screening.
And you're
But
here.
it says, does that mean we have to replace a 30-foot tree with a 30-foot tree,
Right, because it's not
There's
gonna live.
I mean, it could be building up a berm, it could be
Yeah, that's
putting
right.
a high fence and some trees, it could be something that's an
Yeah.
adequate compromise or a substitute, but
Agreed.
planting the Charlie Brown tree on the,
Right.
I'm not saying that that's what you're
That's
suggesting to
the
do,
other
but
tree.
clearly that's, right. I mean,
Yeah,
interpretation, I mean, that's a tricky word, it's,
right.
we all have different interpretations, and I just figured that a picture is worth 1,000 words generally, and so if it's not a picture, we should be very specific, so you have, and that protects both parties, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
can't say that an 80-foot tree existed when a picture shows that it wasn't an 80-foot tree, and, vice versa.
I don't think
Totally agree in concept.
Yeah.
It's just,
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
And you're good with the adequacy of the detail on what area will be allowed, outdoor storage-wise will be, okay.
I am, yep.
Okay. Anyone like to make a motion for this, or? Anyone?
All right, I'll give it a shot then. I'll make a motion to approve the settlement agreement with Continental Aluminum to resolve outstanding disputes between parties, contingent on the adequate screening requirements, as that the screening requirements be maintained, and that a 26-foot wide aerial apparatus lane is adhered to and striped along the south facade and east facade, 15 feet away from the edge of the building.
I'll support that, just subject to the amendment we spoke about with the brought up the correct verbiage, specifically detailing the landscaping
I think he,
specifics.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
that's what he was
sorry.
trying to
You did a
say.
nice
Yeah.
job.
I tried.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that.
No, I understand.
And obviously, we don't have that language, but the two of
Right.
you will work that
yeah,
out.
we'll work that out.
And, yeah.
All right. We have a motion and a support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving on to the approval of Jiffy Lube Special Land Use, AP 1942B. Do you want to take this one, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. In front of you tonight is consideration of a special land use for a Jiffy Lube facility. This is one of the last remaining, actually it is the last remaining parcels in Liontown Center. The other being, well, the other that is undeveloped yet, but a site plan approval is for up in the northwest corner. So between these two, they're gonna race to see who can construct first. But this site is really unique. It's 0.66 acres. It's very small. It's very narrow. There is direct access to Line Center Drive that is not on this particular site. It's via access easement to the east. So the structure itself is fairly small. There will be 4 bays to be utilized for a quick oil change service or other associated uses, tire rotations, some of these minor automotive repairs and quick change services. So as part of this, these uses are a special land use per the PD, the approved plan development agreement for Liontown Center. And as such, the Planning Commission was required to hold their public hearing, which they did on November 12th. At that time, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the special land use contingent on site plan approval, as well as 2 additional comments that there's no outdoor storage of materials, including tires, and no selling of merchandise or working on vehicles outside of the building. Based on that recommendation, you have 9 review standards to consider for any special land use. The first is compatibility with adjacent uses, and we don't find any conflicts with any of the other related uses along here. There are automotive uses, both repair and new vehicle sales in this area, so we don't find conflict there. This area is, in terms of future land use and master planning, this area is intended for service uses, so it is consistent with the objectives of the master plan. In terms of public services, we don't anticipate any change in the requirements above and beyond what was planned for the site. Same thing for traffic. In terms of detrimental effects, we don't find any associated with these uses. We note that in the Planning Commission's consideration, we talked a bit about the storage of fluids and how that might impact the site. And Mr. Coonan is here on behalf of the applicant. He can talk a bit more in detail if you have questions, but all of the fluids are stored in the basement of the structure in containers, which then get pumped out to trucks for disposals. And one of the things that we learned at that point was the recycling of used fluids is a part of the business model for Jiffy Lube, so they are recycling all of the fluids that they're collecting. So it's in their best interest to maintain those on site and not have leaks and things like that. In terms of isolation of existing uses, This is not an applicable standard. We're not isolating any residential uses for this. In terms of a base of need, there aren't any quick service oil change facilities, although we do have more full service, both in the dealerships and Walmart, and I understand Bell Tire does as well. However, we do note that the application materials state from the applicant that the real estate team has identified this location as a market for the use. We don't find that it would have a negative impact economically on adjacent properties or the community, and there really aren't any natural environment considerations as the site has been prepped already. Based on compliance with the 9 standards and the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the special land use, we would also recommend approval of the special land use contingent on those 2 recommended conditions for no outdoor storage of materials, including tires, and no selling of merchandise or working on vehicles outside the building.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Got anything? You don't have anything on this one. Okay. Applicant want to stand? You guys got anything? This is special land use. Anyone got any questions?
I have a couple quick comments. I know that the Planning Commission makes the determination on the elevation and the site plan. I don't think the use is a bad use. I'm just going to make a couple comments. This is the only, you mentioned, Brian, several other service-related uses, but this is the only one where we're going to be looking at doors. We're seeing a lot of doors here, and the doors, I Googled images of Jiffy Lube stores, and these doors look odd to me. A lot of the doors that I saw had more glass on them and looked less industrial and more inviting. So while I'm not going to get too far into this, I do want to make mention that I think that architecturally some things could be done with upgrading some of the building materials or breaking up the roof lines. I saw awnings that were your traditional shaped awnings and maybe those more kind of rectangular panel, I don't even know what you'd call an awning, that project over the bay doors to kind of break up the facade a little bit as kind of a decorative feature. I mean, I'd encourage you and for Brian and Patty, who will be at the Planning Commission, to push to make some of those upgrades to maybe offset the fact that because of the size and the shape of this site, we have no other way to really orient the building to avoid.
We already talked about the doors. So
yeah, so I just, it was doors and some
yeah.
of the features, and I don't want to bog us down, and I just wanted to say for the record, the use, the use of it as a Jiffy Lube center is not a concern. It meets the requirements of the ordinance. It's just the the appearance, I think, could use some touches here and there if you could work that out with the Planning Commission.
All right, any other questions?
No.
Nope.
Want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Jiffy Lube Special Land Use AP-19-42B with the McKenna letter dated November 21st with the 2 conditions: no outdoor storage of materials including tires and no selling of merchandise or working on vehicles outside of the building.
I'll support that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on, this is the approval of the Highland treatment contract for 1 year. And the only thing I'm going to have him change here, just so everyone understands, he's asking for a small increase here of 2.2%. But I am going to ask him to change the dates on these and make these, the years start January 1st until December on our budget year.
Yes, that would be so much better.
So that's the only change, and this will not be retroactive. This new increase will take place in January. So that's the only difference on this contract, and he's done a very good job. Bob can tell you that. He's done a good job. We've had a lot of curveballs thrown at us in our first year into this thing, and it's about 1.5 years now.
Yep, 1.5 years right now.
But it's really come through well, and I'd like to at least, this is just a yearly contract.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract extension renewal for operations of the water system for Highland treatment.
Support.
Could you add the date?
Oh, yep, to
Yeah.
effective January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Oh,
I'd
sorry.
just also like to make a comment that I appreciate the work they're doing at about 10% of the cost of what Oakland County was billing us for a number of years, so a 2.2% increase when we were paying 1,000% higher than we're paying now is pretty reasonable.
very
And it's pretty
reasonable.
unfortunate we paid so much for so long.
He's extremely responsive, too,
Yep.
when you get him.
I've become much more comfortable working with a lot of Anthony's guys on a first-name basis, and they respond quickly when I call. That makes me feel very good, too.
Yeah. All right, did we get a second on that?
Nope.
I just started talking.
Sorry.
So, sorry.
So Patty, support? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to the consideration of adoption of the first reading of the amendment to the Code of Ordinances. This is for builders' cash deposit. And the reason that we're amending this is it's been more commercial, it's been all commercial actually, where they'll come in and we'll do a application review and then they don't come back. So we put a lot of time in doing these reviews and then they don't come back. So we're out the money from all the consultants' fees. And so what we'd like to do is put in the ordinance to start getting a cash deposit on receipt of the application. And then accordingly, we make it accordingly.
And then the other significant change is there was a little bit of a disconnect because engineering would go in after the utilities were installed and approve, but later then when a structure would be built, say a home was built, they might cover up a manhole. But engineering had already completed the review, so now we've put the two together so that before they get money back, engineering will go out yet again and verify that they haven't covered a manhole or interfered with any of the utilities with their landscaping or final construction. And that wasn't in there before.
Yeah. It's a good addition to the ordinance. It's a good amendment.
I'll make a motion to move ordinance 11-19 to second reading.
Support.
Nope.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Why so slow?
All right, now we're going to move on to the budget amendments. And as you can see, there's 3 of them there. And they're kind of extreme, and it's all because of fighting the tax bills. The only one that's not the tax bill fight is the contributions, and that's only because we paid that in 17. 18.
Yeah, we had Southline Area Youth Assistance. They also run June, or July through June. So they're on 6 months of our years, well, however it falls. But what had happened was in the beginning of 2019, we received some bills for 2018 to pay Southline Area Youth Assistance because, again, we are paying back on their bills and they're at the half year for us, not at our year. So we didn't know that was coming, so we're a little bit over on that one.
So them are the amendments. The assessing amendment and the legal was fighting the, what was it, the tax tribunals
The country club?
for the country clubs.
Which we won.
Well worth. So,
Which they increased them.
Carol, do I make a motion for each to approve, to adopt, or can I
I
adopt
think
the whole sheet?
you can adopt it as one.
Okay. Is all for the general fund? So I'll make a motion to adopt the 3 amendments for the general fund for 2019.
Support.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and this is pretty good that there's only 3.
Excellent.
It's really good, actually. All right, moving on to the consideration of the 2020 budget and adoption. I'd like to talk about a couple small things. The one thing was the senior center, where I'd like to add at least $5,000 extra on our contribution to the senior center. And I'm not really sure where we'd put that in the budget if we decided to do that. Where do you think that would go?
I think we have it.
Community center? We've got other functions.
No, it would be with the CDBG.
Citizens programs.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, so that-
Okay, well, citizens programs.
It's Department 748. And I think that's active adults is the very first one. I think we have 25,000 in there already.
Is it?
And
Oh, so
just
we already
Haven.
have quite a few,
Yep.
we have quite a bit of money in
Yeah,
there.
I think you upped it there.
Yeah, and we did the whole amount there, so that actually could come down.
So we're offsetting, we're
We can take-
adding really like 7,000, right?
We're adding 7 because 18 is spoken for the CDBG funds. That's an in and out.
That isn't, oh, yes, you're right.
Yep. And then.
So we'd be down a little bit.
Haven, and then, yeah. So youth assistance, we will have the 3,000, excuse me, which is a contribution for the CDBG and in and out, and then the rest would be the 6,000. So if you wanted to up that, you could. If that's what Lisa wanted to do.
Does anyone,
For that one.
does anyone think that that's a bad idea, or are you good for an extra 5,000 to the senior center?
7?
You want to go 7?
Well, I think 7
is
gets,
7.
if they're saying 25 and we were at 18.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that would be 7K extra going to the
Senior center.
senior center. Okay.
And then Southline Youth
Youth
Assistance,
Could we make it the 13?
I mean,
That gives them the 10 to use where they need for
I
our
think-
youth assistance.
yeah, I mean, it's a great program.
It is.
It is a good
Yeah, I
program.
agree. Yep.
I don't object to that.
Do you want to add a little bit to that?
That's just my opinion, I don't know, I mean,
We've got 10, and that,
well, there's
Make
3,900.
up-
It's 3,000,
Yeah.
951, so can we make it 13,951? Is that good? Or
I'm
make
okay
it an
with
even
that.
is everybody
14?
good with
Why don't
that?
you just
Make it even 14?
14, all right,
Okay.
so we'll change that budget number to 14K instead.
Well, it would actually not, John, would it be, it would be like 10,000 and some change, right?
Right.
Because then
Yeah,
it-
we'll just go over a little bit.
But I mean, yeah, but then, so the total would be, so it's not double reflect, or is it
No.
reflected?
Well, what happens is we do pay the $3,000 bill
we
out of
pay it
there.
out
Oh, I understand that it gets
Yeah,
received
so
back in
it's-
as
yes,
revenue
it's
when we
right.
get it
That's
reimbursed
correct.
from
Yeah,
the
it's in the
government.
re-
Okay,
yes.
yeah, I understand, sorry.
But we still have to pay it out of the expense fund.
Right.
True.
So that's why it's got
We're
to show
just
up
getting
there.
some of it back through,
Mhm.
yeah,
Right.
okay, I got you,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
Those debits and credits.
25, yes.
so that's in the general fund. I don't know, have you guys had any other questions on the general fund itself? I
No.
think we went over it pretty well. It's in pretty good shape.
John, we had talked at our budget meeting about the traffic signal at Kent Lake and Silver Lake, and you had mentioned
Yeah.
that the road commission said we might not have enough money in there for that.
Yeah, I have worked, actually, Chris, you did that research and you found that one warranted,
Yeah, the
I sent that
traffic
to
signal.
them, and they're going over that. So
Okay.
they're looking at it, so
We
they
could make
haven't
a
gotten
budget
back to me.
amendment for it.
Okay, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if we.
160.
Yeah.
I think we had
150.
50 in
We have
there.
150, but we could do a budget amendment when we
With
figure out what
During
it's
the
gonna
year.
be.
Exactly.
See, I don't want to
Set a
really go
guess.
too much more until I
Okay.
find out what they're thinking, so they don't
fine.
think
If
it's
we
an
think
open
it's-
check. You know what I'm saying?
Uh,
But she's looking at it again. I sent that letter that you sent me to her,
Okay.
and she's looking at it. She said, oh, okay, good.
And they've been really good about partnering with us.
They have
and
been.
putting lights in
Yes.
at their expense in situations where it's warranted, so I appreciate
She's
that.
looking at it, and I'll tell you, she was very, very nice.
And now that we're bringing.
The other thing I wanted to bring,
This time.
Contributing.
is- Not that we haven't in the past, but.
Sure.
in the budget also, let me see, where is it at? In, where's the street? Streets.
446, I think?
Yeah, 446,
Mhm.
third page,
Yeah.
bottom.
Streets, Metro Light, traffic light,
0.
road. Kent Lake. Okay, right here at the bottom. I don't know if you guys had seen that, and we've got it under repairs and maintenance. this is a 2020, the county asked if we could help them gravel roads again this year, okay? So if you look down in that column, I put $150,000 in there to help them. We did $180,000 to help them the one year about
2 years ago?
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago.
We upgraded a limestone that year, right, because it was a better material
They
too?
fixed the drainage.
They
Did
fixed
we?
a lot of the drains. They did like 7 or 8 miles of road, and well, they came to me and they asked me again if we could partner up where they could do some more roads, and they haven't given me the list of roads, but they did some calculations on the cost, which they figured it'd be around 150, 140, 150. So I did put that in there, and I wanted to draw that to your attention because we hadn't talked about that. And I don't know what roads they're planning on doing. I put it in the budget here, and I would bring that to you. Once they give me the list of roads, as long as I tell them, okay, we're in for this amount of money, they'll bring me the list of roads to help and then I can bring them to you and tell you what their plan is. Are you guys okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
John, was this extra or is this reallocated from somewhere else, that the money for the graveling?
Well, that's, see in the repairs and maintenance, right on the bottom, I put in here 2020 extra
Yes.
road graveling.
So that was just an additional item that was placed, okay. The other thing I guess we were planning on doing last year, and we didn't get to it, was also the maintenance on the Huron Valley Trail. Is that,
Yeah.
that's then being carried over in 2020 as
I think
well?
we carried about 100 over, I
Yeah.
think, is what we had in there.
But we gotta do something.
And we gotta do something. We have to
Yeah.
do something with that, and that's another one. If we find that thing needs more work than we think, then we'll have to amend the budget and fix it. I mean, them are good
I
things.
think it's a good start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a good start.
I believe there could potentially be some grant opportunities for
We're looking into
working on the Huron Valley Trail
Yeah.
through MDOT.
John, I have a question on ZBA 706.003.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 3%.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
It just didn't get written
Oh,
in.
that
We'll
didn't-
double
yeah,
check that.
I'll make sure
but
you do.
Yeah, I already changed it on mine.
Well, why would you notice that? I'm kidding.
Take care of that.
I think it was just not typed in, but that does get it,
Okay.
okay? Any others? Any other questions on the general fund?
Well, I know we put the park next to go over, but I was just wondering if here maybe we should make the
Yeah,
adjustment in the park. It's Department 752.
Well,
So,
that-
the
because
ice rink-
that was the other thing that we did want to bring your attention. We did incorporate that into the general fund now. If you notice, the park is now part of the fund. And so in that fund, we've put some numbers in here.
And we funded the ice rink at 11.
So that's, I have a couple possible tweaks there.
He wants a Zamboni now.
No Zamboni. That would be awesome. I would love to drive a Zamboni. But no, I just noticed that we had the 50K in there for 11 Mile, and I don't know what we'd be doing this year that would be
Well,
in that
It's not
ballpark.
dead yet. We don't know.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're-
I know,
So we
right.
wanna
Okay, I
not
just
fund
didn't
it.
know if that number had a reason for being that number. And then our M-Parks membership fees and training is not accounted for in there.
Okay, so you need membership.
So I was gonna say put 1,500 on there if that's okay, because the
Who went
conference is
last
actually
time?
in Novi this year, so last year no one did go, that's why I think if we were
Oh,
basing
okay.
it just on 2019 actuals, that's why it probably got,
Okay, so you will
Skip,
go this
but
year
yes.
to Novi? Okay.
yeah.
Membership, and what was the other one?
Membership and dues?
Yes, it's the dues and the
It's
conference, I don't know if those need separate lines or
No, it's the same
but,
membership and dues.
um,
All right,
Otherwise, yeah,
I
the
know
amounts were good.
we're getting ahead of ourselves on this amendment for the ice rink. What is that?
That's-
I mean, that would have to go in the budget.
That's where I guess I don't know if, because it would be coming probably out of the 2019 funds, I don't know if we need to.
Well, we only approved 10,000 to come out, or was it was 10?
10.
10.
Right, on
That was
the
the
motion, but the
2019.
budgeted amounts
2020.
in 2019 for the miscellaneous expenses, I think were higher.
I think he's gonna buy it. I don't know.
So I just don't know if if you actually have to have it onto the 2020 or if it can come out of the 2019.
Well, is it going to get ordered and paid for in 2019, or
If you don't, if you don't get it up pretty soon, you're gonna miss the season.
Depending upon what you say on that other agenda item, I can walk someone through actually doing the ordering tomorrow.
Okay, so shouldn't we talk about that right now then?
Well, we have to know
This
if
is
we
for
have to up.
2020.
Yeah,
If the
Right.
plan is to do it in 2019, then
This
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
matter.
Right,
So this
that's
doesn't
what
matter.
I'm saying, is
Okay,
I don't
gotcha.
think
Okay.
that that number will have to go up right now, and we can always amend it later if we do, right?
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Anything else on the general fund?
yeah, John, I did want
Go
to
ahead.
bring up and see if the board was amenable to putting in a line item on the purchase of development rights, seed money, as Brian is working to update that ordinance. I know the discussion last month, you know, it was probably mixed reviews, but I did want to at least ask the question and say, I mean, Brian and I talked a little bit about this. I did a little more research to try and quantify something, and looking at different communities, the programs are about $2,000 to $4,000 per acre. We would probably want, if a property owner was willing, we would probably only consider something in at least 10 acres to make it make sense. And so a minimum amount of seed money is probably in the $40,000 range. Obviously, regardless of the amount that is put in the budget, it would need board action on it anyway. So I guess at this point, I was just looking to see if we can get a line item added to the budget and throw in 40,000 just so people are aware if they want to take advantage of the updated ordinance, that there's something there and wouldn't have to jump through too many hoops. But I'll leave it open to the board because I know I'm just one.
I'm really, really confused about the whole idea of buying development rights and not having any access to the property. I'm a little confused on that. I would think if we were going to leverage property for township, out of a township general fund, and this is just my thought, why wouldn't we buy property and do something with the property so that the people could actually do something with the property instead of buying just the development rights where they have no right to the property, but it's taxpayer money buying it? I'm a little confused on how the whole concept works, and I was talking to Brian also about it, and the funding part of it has really got me a little bit wondering too. We talked in the funding, maybe it was Chris I was talking to, I think it was Chris. But he said basically they take the vacant property, assess the value, and then take the zoning after developed and assess the value, and your rights are what's in between. So let's just take Irwin's for just to say Irwin's. So the development rights on Irwin's would be about $7 million. And we would have literally zero access to the land. He'd still own it. If he decided to move to California tomorrow because he wanted to retire and left it just go sit there, he could do that. If he wanted to sell it to someone else and they wanted to keep an orchard going, the tax monies would come off, the caps would come off, and the taxes would be so high, I'm not sure he could run a orchard by that. I'm just saying, the funding part of this has got me like, I don't even think you could even get close to anything with 40,000. I think you'd have to put a few million in there.
Well, yeah, for that case, when you're talking 250 acres, the numbers get...
Well, no, but let's
a bit
talk
big.
10 acres. Let's talk 10 acres on 10 Mile that a farmer says, well, I'm never going to develop, so would you consider buying? And we said, okay. And they assess the property at farmland, and then they assess it at 10 houses built on the property at full zone, and we pay the difference.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? I think it's a lot more money than we think. And I think that's why I think a lot of these, I also talked to someone, and I don't remember if it was Chris or Brian. They said there's only been one community in all of Michigan that has ever been successful. And that was Old Mission Peninsula in Traverse City. And the reason is because there's a lot of millionaires that live on that piece, and they wanted to protect all the vineyards that are up there. There was one road in and one road out. So they got together, they set a millage, And they actually bought all the farmland development rights, but it was kind of like their own. But it was millions and millions of dollars, but it did keep the development out of the peninsula.
Yeah, well, you're talking about Acme Township is the community that's been successful. What Scioto Township's done it. Salem Township has a program. Northfield Township has a
But
program.
they're all
Ann Arbor
farmlands.
Township has
They're
a
all
program.
farmlands without water
then-
and sewer.
Yeah, and then those areas could be obviously cheaper. I mean, we have plenty of areas.
But
in
what
the
I'm
township
saying is
without
they're all
water and
land
sewer.
that doesn't have water and sewer and is
Mhm.
developed. So basically, they still have a lot of open area that it might, which this ordinance, when it was put on the books, was in the 90s when we had a lot of open property and no water and sewer, and it may have made sense back then. Chris, I think it's wonderful you bring it. I'm just trying to figure it out exactly, and the funding source
Well, I am-
and how much it could cost.
I am too. I'm just wondering, what places do you want this to happen at? I mean, shouldn't that be the first discussion?
And we did have Brian and I did have a brief discussion, and as far as a scoring system or some sort of methodology to figure out what areas. And the areas that are already identified on the master plan is the priority 1, 2, and 3 natural areas would be a logical choice. So those areas have already kind of been identified as a start. And obviously, it's up to the property owner too. Maybe, 10% of these people want to do it, and
I'm just wondering if maybe we took that money that you want to set aside for that and maybe actually found some property. I know when Sean brought it up, I was talking to Sean, and he had mentioned also something in a similar kind of light, saying maybe we look at things like you're talking about and maybe trying to buy the piece of property and maybe make it so that the township residents can actually use it, since they're spending money out of the funds to actually use it.
yeah, and I'm not opposed to that either. It just seemed like it would be cheaper to buy the difference in development rights than a property outright. So, but
the
if we can do
development-
it,
But see, I
You
think
know,
it'd be
it's-
more expensive, the development rights, because they go from farmland to fully developed land and you pay the difference. I think there'd be a lot of people wanting to take you up on that maybe live out on dirt roads that, I don't know.
Last month, when we had the presentation, I had a couple questions that are kind of in between these issues. I don't think the concept is necessarily a bad concept, but my question, which was not answered that night, was, well, what does this cost? And I appreciate you looking into that. And that's what led me to think, it might be really expensive. So if it's, I'll just throw a number out there, $200,000 to transfer development rights and $400,000 to just buy the property, then everyone can use it, and it's a key piece of property in one of the priority areas, then maybe we go further and maybe we will utilize more money in doing, in purchasing it and doing it that way. But we'll have the ability to preserve land and then let all of the residents use the land. It's their land and it's their money, and that without knowing, as an example, what it would cost, or, a case example of, something that was done in Scioto or Salem or, another community, it was hard for me to get my head around it.
Well, in a compromise, couldn't we have a line item that is property development rights and/or property acquisition, and put seed money in that way? And it doesn't mean that we have to use it this year. It just seems like there are two possible ways to, what John is saying and what Sean's saying and what Chris is saying, and just do an and/or on the line item and put money in that way.
Well, I wouldn't object to that because it still has to be a decision. There's a whole process that would take months to go through here and evaluating, what properties and, whether or not there are interested parties to sell a piece of land that we want to protect somewhere. So
I'm not against it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just asking questions that I've been asked, when they tell me, well, what do we
That's
get
when I
for
put the
that?
call to you, because I wanted to talk about, if you're putting money in the budget, it's gotta be realistic. And that's my thought. But, we still have some big tracts of land in the township that haven't been brought to us yet.
right.
But you're probably talking millions of dollars.
yeah, I don't know that we could afford to buy huge tracts of
I
land,
don't know
but
if
key
it's
pieces might
really,
be all we
truly
could.
the residents that I have spoken to, which are different from the residents that Chris has spoken to. They don't wanna use township money for that. They're telling me more hold to the master plan and let it develop as it should. That they don't want their tax dollars spent to purchase development rights. And I don't have enough information on it. It's the first time I really ever heard of it is when Chris brought it with no ordinance to look at, nothing. We haven't even really talked about it. So,
And I'll tell
I
you,
thought he probably knew more, you know, I wanted to pick his brain about it a little bit.
We're a very healthy township right now because of development. And it seems
That can go
kind of
away.
strange that you want to curtail development. I mean, you want to do it within a certain framework, but, and we do need parks, we do need places to do that, but like John mentioned, though, it makes more sense to me to buy that land outright.
Yeah, I don't disagree on the buying land outright, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to curtail development, because this is a property owner would have to do this. It's not, we're not taking anybody's land. It would have to be like, if I own 10 acres and I said, you know what, I would rather just donate this to the township, or even just put it in a conservancy and, you know, not deal with
but
the
you're not
developer.
donating, it's not a donation to the township. You're paying only to make sure that them
Correct.
people don't develop on the piece. You don't
Right.
have any right to that property.
Right.
You can't go on that property,
Sorry, I
you're
didn't mean
just
to say
paying them
donation.
not to develop.
Yeah.
So that's where I got the kickback. When they finally understand what that actually means, then they say, well, how much does it cost? And when you actually tell them it's the vacant land to the development land, we pay the difference, and they go, are you out of your, what? How much is that gonna cost? And it's like, well, we're just kicking it around, we're looking at it, we're trying to figure out ways to keep open space. And then the next person said, well, in the master plan, and you do PDs, it has open space, it's required. I said, you're right, we're just looking at options, and it was in the ordinance, so that's what we're looking at. We're just looking at options.
Yeah, and it's just an update of an existing ordinance that, yes, you're right, it was back in the 90s, I guess?
It was an early, because I looked at it, you said
Yeah.
it, and I'd never seen it. And I read through it, and it was like in the early 90s when we had vacant property everywhere, it probably was a great idea. It probably would have worked back then, but then water and sewer started surrounding us, and the land become more developable and worth more money, and
More money,
and then it kind of gets harder. So I think you'd be kind of stuck to the acre pieces that may be on the old dirt roads, and I'm not sure if we're there yet. I don't know, Chris, I don't know.
And you bring up a good point too about the actual purchasing versus, you know, the development rights. And maybe, you know, I like the and/or idea, it's in there, because maybe a route to potentially go is, you know, it is a small 1 to 5 acre piece that we can create little pocket parks or something around the township to use in the future, because we know
But then
that-
it would be worthwhile, right? Because
Right,
you'd have
it could be-
access.
it could- Yeah, I mean, because right now, the south side of the township is
You're right.
underserved in parks.
And the problem with the 11 Mile Park is we were donated that piece, and it's very wet. So it's not like a prime piece that we went out and purchased for a park, which would be very different. You know what I mean?
And I guess a lot of this would make sense, sorry.
no,
A lot of
that's
this would
fine.
make sense too if we actually had somebody come to the table and they actually go through the numbers on it, because it is tough, because we don't know if it's gonna be a small piece, a large piece. I mean, obviously you pick, you know, the largest piece in the township and no, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, but you know, here's the other thing. I mean, other than for Patty's side saying you don't want to put things that are unrealistic as a line item, we can always add it if that happens. I mean, we haven't stopped the process, you know what I'm saying? We're still looking at the ordinance, we're still trying to figure it out, trying to figure out funding. We can always put that line item in. I mean, we can do that at any time. You know, if somebody came up and the ordinance got drafted the right way where it made sense.
Good
And,
on the budget, that's why.
Well, conversely, we could always take it out. I mean, if it's,
but you're tying up monies too, you know, monies that could become available for something other. And I mean, if you want to put in a line item for land acquisition, I don't mind that.
I think an and/or would cover a possible option either way while we're still in this.
Well, I think you got to
fact-finding.
put that out to the public a little bit, because the public is not really happy about that. That's what I'm concerned about. They don't like the idea of just paying somebody off not to develop with their money. And that's basically what it is. We're saying, don't develop, we'll pay
We don't
you.
own
We have no access, we're gonna use taxpayers' money from all around the township, and we're gonna pay you off not to develop. And we have no rights. And when he sells it, he can sell it as long as the development right goes with the property. The next person, we have no rights to it. we just have no rights to it, and we're spending high dollars for it.
I mean, I'm just trying to kind of move along the budget discussion, and because I think this whole big discussion of questions and the public's input, that's a pretty weighty topic of conversation, and to just kind of move along the budget of, if Chris is the one who brought it up, if he wants to go to just say land acquisition, then I'm fine with a line item for that. If he wants to do an and or, I'm fine with that. I think that it would be beneficial to have a little bit more exploration of the topic.
But it's such a big deal, we can't just do it in a couple meetings, is what I'm saying. I mean, we've talked about this twice.
Right, that's why I'm saying, why don't we just move along the budget by putting in a land acquisition line item? And if it turns out that it's not the way we want to go, then can't we just amend the budget to take it out? I don't know if we're tying up any money. I mean, we had some sidewalk improvements that we didn't use last year, and, I mean,
But I think
when we
we've
don't
got some
utilize
issue.
money, we amend the budget. So I don't
All
see
right,
that
well,
as
let's just
an
talk
issue.
about it. What do you want to do? You guys, we got to talk about it. What
I'm
do you
good
wanna
with
do?
adding a land acquisition line.
Is that what you're
because-
gonna do?
I mean, I'm okay with it, because we're still calling it an acquisition, and if we don't do anything with it, then we don't do anything with it.
What
If we
about you,
do-
Chris? Are you happy with that?
Sure, I think
Are you good
that's
with
a
that?
start.
Okay. Where do we want to add that?
I have to find out. I have no idea. You can't just
Yeah.
randomly put them in here.
No, I know, but I mean, we're
Yeah.
just talking, we'll have to figure it
I
out.
mean, we'll figure it out. I gotta find
We'll have
out.
to ask Raina, because
Okay.
land acquisition is something different. We would own it as opposed to a development right.
Right.
So what about under parks for miscellaneous expense? And we just put over by ice rink, land acquisition, potential or possible land acquisition.
Well,
So
let
it
us
would be
look-
strictly for a park, so now it's parkland. That's what it would
I don't know, can we just
Let's
ask?
But it's
look
in the
into
general
it.
fund, so.
Well,
But
no,
let us
that's,
look into
yeah.
it. We can
Yeah.
we
You gotta
can
put it
figure it
I'm
out.
thinking
Okay.
it's capital improvement.
Yeah, I mean,
All right,
yeah.
how much do you want to put in?
Yeah, what do you want to put in it?
Other capital functions.
What would you want to put in that?
I'm good with whatever you guys are.
Lise? What are you thinking?
I did not come up with a number.
Nothing?
Well, my guess was 40,000 was
You
just
want to
based
start it
on.
with 40?
Yeah, that was my wild guess.
Okay,
And then if something comes up and it's more, we talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
all right, we'll put.
So let's do 40.
And I'll find out what the number is. All the
Michelle?
numbers are changing anyhow.
Under the DDA budget, we have a land acquisition line 955.000. So I don't know if that would be the
Okay.
same.
It might.
What was it?
Yeah,
5.5?
but I just don't know.
955.
Yeah, land acquisition is in there, but you'd have to find out what fund it goes to.
Right.
In the general fund, that's the problem, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's start it with that, and then we'll keep up with the other deal, Chris. We'll keep up with that, keep looking into it. Sound good? We'll get a little more information on it, and then we'll go from there.
No, I do appreciate the comments, because I think,
Hey, you know what's-
actually
you're looking
buying it may be the better
We'll just.
deal.
I do too, I think it could be, you know, if we found something that was worthwhile and... Okay, any other questions? We'll go ahead and take care of that, we'll figure that out and get that in there. Any other things in the general? Okay. All right, I have another thing. In the building department, okay, we went ahead and we did the salary raises accordingly. And I think one is a little bit low, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit, is the one for PJ Andrews. She's our coordinator, she does a lot of work, she's here early morning, she's here late at night. We've got her in here at 46. I'd like to raise that one to 48. I'd like 48,000 for that position because she does all the building coordination. And then if you look down the lines here, we've raised the others at a 3,000 increment and puts everybody in, but PJ basically takes care of the building department. I mean, she does it all there. And I'm even thinking 48 is a little low, but I'd love to see her at 50, but
I mean, she basically functions as like an office manager, is that kind of what you would call
she's the entire manager of the
Yeah.
entire place.
it? Okay. Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
And keep Angie and Aaron at the 40?
Yeah, and Kathy at 43.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone have any problems with that? I mean, that's the only thing. We've taken all the other salaries and we've adjusted them. And all the other funds, I believe, are adjusted like we talked. And that's the only ones that I have anything to say about that's changed anything at all.
Are Angie, Aaron, and Kathy full-time?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on these?
Anything else, anyone else? Okay.
All right, then, how do we approve these? Do we have to do them one at a time? I think the last time we did them all at once.
Yeah, I think, Carol, you said we
Yeah,
could
you
just
can
do
do
it
it
all
all
at
at
once. For the whole,
Yes.
all the funds,
Mhm.
which makes sense.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 budget as amended tonight.
I'll support.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Great job, you guys.
Thank you.
Moving on to the sign ordinance, and this, again, this is one that I think Chris brought up, and he sent out an email, and he brought it to our attention, and I think there was some problems in the sign, the zoning sign ordinance, and I think Carol went ahead and fixed it.
Yeah, here's what happened, and I have to laugh because there's a typo in the draft in front of you, but at one point recently, the township amended this ordinance for subparagraph B, because your ordinance used to read 21 days prior to the public hearing, you had to post the sign, and the zoning enabling act only requires 15. So an amendment was made for 15, but somehow when it was codified, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which were part of your ordinance, got dropped off. So the intent of this is to put it back in with 15 days, which is show for your second reading. So it's just putting in what was taken out, and that has, you know, what the sign has to look like, you know, where you post it.
Thank
and-
you. I wasn't sure. You sent the two items and they were exactly the same except for that one line. So I didn't know which one to put in.
Oh,
So
you
I
have the
them
one that
both.
has 15?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. it
Well,
should
yeah,
be
I didn't
15.
have that one. They both, this is the same thing,
Okay.
basically without that, so.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll get it fixed for the next meeting and put it
Right.
in. Okay.
And it has when they have to be removed, which was,
Yeah,
you know,
is that-
Chris's problem.
Is that
Yeah.
in this?
Yes.
And then, the sign, was that
See,
also,
Goes
was
in
that also
here.
addressed for the sign being
At an angle.
at an angle?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Is that item two where it says see illustration and there's no illustration?
Yeah, because
That's your-
this came today.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, I will have the tweaks to have it correct, but that's basically what it is, just to put it back to what it was, just changing the time frame to 15 days. So,
So it's 15 days, 45-degree angles,
Yep.
removal within 7 days of a board motion.
right.
Where's the removal?
It dropped off somehow, so, but no, that would be in.
And what does the removal say?
It has to be removed 7 days after the
7 days.
decision.
Thank you.
I think when this chart went in, it,
It moved
yeah,
everything off.
it
I
went
was-
over it.
Kevin and I were trying to figure it out today. I said, okay, they both look the same except for that one line.
Yeah, so. But anyway, so it's just a correction. So I thought might as well have the first reading on it tonight to just move it along.
So I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 12-19 to second reading.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the ICE amendment and purchase agreement. Purchase agreement? Why did I write that down? Come on,
Purchase
Robert.
order.
Get on up here.
Back. Okay, so what ended up happening is in all of the running around of trying to scramble different quotes from different places and talk through it all live, undershot the amount. So I guess you basically have a choice between two ways to deal with this. One, we up the amount, or two, we decrease or we switch to different materials.
All right,
So
get to
if-
the nuts and bolts, Robert. What's it
Right.
cost?
I don't have solid numbers on lighting. That's why I was just running past Leslie. But my best guess at this point is a not to exceed of 12.5 instead of 10
Okay.
for the project, which I think is fine. If you want to stay under, we can switch out materials and try and make it smaller and cheaper, but
I think we're too far into it. Well, we're not into it at all, but I mean,
Right.
you got us wanting it, and I think we picked out the one we wanted, right?
I'll make a motion to approve the request to add $3,000 to the request for ice rink. So as opposed to being previously approved for not to exceed 10,000, that project would be a not to exceed 13,000. With all the other things we talked about
I'll
being
support
included.
that.
Yep.
Lighting, everything stays in. Yeah.
Okay, all those in
Right.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? See, you
Thank
didn't
you.
need to talk so much.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Or
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Robert, I was on the fence there.
See, if you talk too much, you lose the argument.
9:14
What's
PM
that?
adjourned.
Do you want me to work through that?
9:14 PM.
See, if you talk